Hi, General Counsel, is there a quorum?
Madam Chair, you do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Jody Golden. I'm Chief of Staff for Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, filling in for her today, and I'm calling to order the December 2021 meeting of the IHCDA Board of Directors. We're meeting telephonically today pursuant to the current health emergency in Indiana Code 5-14-1.5-3.7. Since we're meeting telephonically, the procedures will be a little different from those we use during our regular board meetings. There will be an audio feed for the general public so that members of the public can listen to the meeting, and there will be a link to a video recording posted on IHCDA's website next month. At that time, the motions are being made. Each board member that makes a motion must state his or her first and last name for the record. I will now take a roll call of the board members to confirm who is present. Mark Pasquarella.
Present.
Indiana Treasurer Kelly Mitchell.
I'm here.
June Midkiff.
I'm here.
Andy Place Sr.
I'm here.
G. Michael Schottmeyer. Tom McGowan. Okay. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the November 18th, 2021 board meeting. Are there any questions from the board regarding the November 18th, 2021 minutes? Okay, if there are none, then may I have a motion to approve?
Andy Place, motion to approve.
Kelly Mitchell, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Madam Chair, I abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, and that was June Midkiff?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Seeing that, the motion passes unanimously. Or I guess it wouldn't be unanimously with the abstention. Is that correct, General Counsel?
Yes. Hello, hello. Daggone it. You know,
We can
I'm
hear
sorry. Oh, you can? Okay, good. Yes.
All right. We'll move on to the second piece of our agenda today under real estate. Please welcome Matt Rayburn to present a recommendation regarding the emergency rental assistance to the housing stability services. Matt?
Excellent. Thank you, Jody. Good morning, board. My name is Matt Rayburn. I am the Deputy Executive Director and Chief Real Estate Development Officer for IHCDA. And I'm excited this morning to come before the board and present a recommendation for 2 contracts under the Emergency Rental Assistance 2 program. First, as a little bit of background, the board is, I think, very aware now that since March of 2021, IHCDA has been administering the Emergency Rental Assistance Program on behalf of the state of Indiana. The ERA program is a Treasury-funded program, and the primary purpose of emergency rental assistance, as the name suggests, is to provide rental assistance, but also utility assistance to qualified Indiana renter households. So since March, we have been using the pot of money that's known as ERA 1.0, and we have been providing rental assistance and utility assistance to Hoosiers, and Jake has been providing monthly updates on that program during his executive update. What I'm here to talk about this morning, though, is as we start to move into ERA 2.0, IHCDA has the opportunity to continue using those funds to provide rental assistance and utility assistance, but also to be a little creative and have the opportunity to provide service funding as well. So within the parameters of the ERA 2.0 program, the Treasury guidance specifically allows an ERA grantee to use up to 10% of its ERA 2 funds instead of doing rental and utility assistance to take that 10% and provide what is called housing stability services. And Treasury broadly defines housing stability services as including a variety of activities ranging from eviction prevention programs, mediation between landlords and tenants, housing counseling, housing navigation, i.e. helping renters find new housing if they have been evicted or are in the middle of a housing search, as well as a variety of other case management and legal service type activities. The households receiving these services would still be IRA eligible households, so households that are income eligible and are at risk of housing instability or homelessness. So just at the board memo that you have in front of you goes over exact dollar amounts. High level, IHCDA through an MOU with the state budget agency is administering about $291 million of emergency rental assistance too. So our 10% carve out for services is a little over $29 million. Per the Treasury rules, then, of that $29 million that we can put into the service bucket, at least 85%, so 24.7 million, has to go directly to the provision of services. And then the remaining 15%, which is about $4.3 million, can cover administrative costs associated with those services. And that would also include marketing and outreach to advertise those services to households throughout the state. So that's a little bit of background on ERA2 and how it's different than the ERA1 program we've currently been administering. So I want to just quickly now talk a little bit about the process we've used and our thought process on how to get these services out into the field. So IHCDA, I think very quickly as we thought about ERA2 services, realized it would not necessarily be in our best interest to try and directly contract with, potentially hundreds of nonprofits across the state to provide housing stability and legal services. Rather, we realized that what we think will be the most effective way to administer this program would be to identify two key entities, one on the housing counseling and case management side, and one on the legal service side, and then to have those associations be responsible for creating networks of statewide providers. So to accomplish this end, on October 25th, IHCDA released two separate requests for proposals. One was, again, on the housing counseling and service side. One was on the legal aid side, with the goal of identifying a qualified, kind of robust association who could respond, be our direct contractor, and then they would be responsible for creating a statewide network of local service providers and ensuring that we would have 92 county coverage on this service program. So responses to the RFP were due by November 25th, and IHCDA received exactly one response under each RFP. So our sole respondent for the housing counseling and case management side was the Indiana Community Action Association, or INCA, and then the sole respondent on the legal services side was the Indiana Bar Foundation, Inc. So in Table A of your packet, you will see the exact amounts that each of these two respondents requested in their proposal, and it's broken down by the amount they requested for direct service program funds versus administrative funds. So what you will see here is that when we added those two requests together, the two respondents requested an aggregate amount of almost $31.5 million, and it was around $29 million we had available under the program. So what we did then, we reviewed and believed both responses were very good responses, met all of our requirements, and our goal was to be able to fund both of them to the highest extent possible. So what we did was just run a prorated calculation based on our available funds versus the requests received. And if you look in Table B, then you will see that we have basically what we have done here is we are able to fund each of the requests at just over 90% of what they requested, which gets us to a total aggregate amount we'll be awarding today of $28.5 million between those two organizations. This does leave just over $600,000 left that we are not recommending for funding today, and that $620,000 would be available for IHCDA's administrative costs affiliated with running this program over the next 2 years. And then if for some reason we did not need those admin dollars, we would be able to re-award those out in the future. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions about the program. And so to quickly summarize, especially for those on the call who don't see the memo in front of them, our recommendation will be $13,143,478.93 to the Indiana Bar Foundation and $15,410,410.08 to Inca, for a total recommendation of $28,553,889. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Matt from the board? Okay, Matt, do you have a resolution?
I do indeed. Thanks, Jody. Staff respectfully requests that the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve an aggregate award of ERA2 funding for housing stability services in an aggregate amount not to exceed $28,553,889 to the two organizations listed in Table B as recommended by staff.
Okay, we have a resolution. Do I have a motion?
Motion for approval, Andy Place.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second, Mark Pascarella.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Matt.
Excellent. Thank you, board. We're excited to launch this new initiative. And I do want to acknowledge that I see that representatives from both Inca and IBF are on the call today. So I just wanted to congratulate them on their successful responses and say we look forward to working with them on launching this new program. So thanks again, board.
Thanks, Matt. All right, we'll move on to letter B under real estate. Please welcome Jeff Z. to present a recommendation regarding the Housing Choice Voucher Program approval to accept transfer of the Candleton Housing Authority Housing Choice Voucher Program. Jeff?
Good morning, board. Thanks for having me today. I'm here to discuss the transfer of Candleton Housing Authority's HGV program to IHCDA's HGV program. This started back in August. Candleton Housing Authority's board chair and Lincoln Hills, who is currently subcontracted by them to administer the program, reached out to me to discuss the possibility of transferring their vouchers to us. They recognize that while they're currently providing excellent service to their participants in the area, long term it would be best to transfer the vouchers to us. They already are administered by Lincoln Hills, and they'll continue to be administered by Lincoln Hills following the transfer, but under a subcontract from IHCDA. The advantages of having it under IHCDA rather than Candleton Housing Authority is just to have some of the economies of scale that we can provide as a larger PHA, better rates on software, quality assurance inspections, those type of third-party contracts. So they approached us. We thought it was a good idea that would be in the best interest of the participants in that area to ensure that their program remains stable and sustainable into the future, and that they can take advantage of some of those economies of scales that will allow them to provide the best service possible to those participants. So we have begun the process of discussing this with HUD, and they've requested that we have a resolution submitted to them from the board by January 1st, at which point they would start processing the transfer to be effective July 1st, 2022. So with that, I can take any questions from the board.
Okay, any questions for Jeff? Okay, Jeff, did you have a resolution?
Yes, I have a very lengthy resolution. Staff respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approve IHCDA accepting the transfer of the Housing Choice Voucher Program from the Candleton Housing Authority in coordination with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and to do and take all actions necessary to effectuate such transfer in a manner which negligibly burdens HGV clients and which limits the transfer to the direct assets and obligations of Candleton Housing Authority, HGVP, pursuant to Section 8 of the U.S. Housing Act of 1937, as amended 42 U.S.C. 1437F, including assuming the allocated vouchers and requirements for making housing assistance payments, and specifically not including assuming any other Candleton Housing Authority liabilities, including unmet payroll obligations or costs associated with dissolution.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Board, do I have a motion?
Excuse me, if I move to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Andy Place, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Board.
Okay, now we'll move on to letter C under real estate, the monthly update of the tax credit assistance program. So please welcome Alan Rakowski to give the monthly update for the Tcap policy and delegated authority.
Yes, thank you. As mentioned, this is Alan Rakowski, Director of Real Estate Allocation, here today to give the monthly update on the Tcap allocations that we've made. So if you recall, on September 23rd, the board authorized IHCDA's Deputy Executive Director and Chief Real Estate Development Officer to take all actions necessary to distribute additional allocations of Tcap. These are for tax credit developments that were negatively impacted by cost increases. And as part of that, we agreed to provide the board a monthly update on the awards that we made. So on the memo, we list the 2 projects that were approved since the last board meeting. These 2 are Union at 16th in Indianapolis, a new construction project that was awarded $500,000, and Emmy June Cove in Chandler, a new construction project that was also awarded $500,000. With these 2 awards, the total number of approvals under this policy is now 4, for a total of $1,713,898. And I will be happy to take any questions the board might have.
Okay, board, we have any questions for Alan? Okay, Alan, you have a resolution?
I do not. This was just informational today.
Yes, sorry. Okay, well, thank you, Alan. We appreciate the update.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to section 3 of our agenda today under asset preservation. Please welcome Chris Nevels to present 2 recommendations regarding the 2021 Indiana Foreclosure Prevention Network agency funding allocation. Chris?
Good morning, board. My name is Chris Nevels. I am the Director of Asset Preservation, and I'm here to discuss the funding allocation for the Indiana Foreclosure Prevention Network. So the Indiana Foreclosure Prevention Network, or Ifpn, was created to provide free foreclosure prevention counseling to homeowners in Indiana who are in foreclosure or facing imminent foreclosure. Ifpn has a network of 10 agencies that can provide counseling to Hoosiers who are in crisis. The Ifpn has been helping people in Indiana for over 10 years and was a critical factor in IHCDA's hardest hit fund program, having a overall approval rate above 80%. IFPN agencies are located across the state and can guide homeowners through several different loss mitigation options. So back in November of 2017, the board of directors approved an allocation of $1.5 million in IFPN cash reserves to approved IFPN agencies. So this was not an individual allocation, but the entire pool of funds was made available to be accessed by the agencies. As of the end of November of 2021, IHCDA has spent $1,401,788 of the $1.5 million that was allocated. These funds were used pursuant to Indiana code, and there are still some fees that continue to trickle in to the IFPN account, even though that code has expired. On November 12th, 2021, IHCDA began utilizing IFPN agencies to reach out and provide free foreclosure prevention counseling to homeowners who had added their information to the Homeowner Assistance Fund notification list, which they were able to access on our website, 877gethope.org. So this initiative to reach out to these people on the list has 2 primary goals. The first is to aid homeowners who are in crisis, and the second is to identify homeowners on the wait list who are still interested in applying for HAF when it opens up, so that we can more easily contact them, more quickly contact them once the program launches. So IHCDA intends to fund this initiative using our remaining IFPN funds. Currently, IHCDA has $161,222.53 in IFPN funding available. Once the remainder of that initial $1.5 million allocation is accounted for, there is a total of $63,010.53 in unallocated IFPN funding remaining. So IHCDA staff proposes that this remaining amount be allocated among the approved IFPN agencies, which you can see in Table A below. No individual agency allocations are proposed. Rather, the entire pool of that funding would be available to be accessed by approved agencies on a first come, first served per client basis. And just to list off those agencies, which you can see in Table A, they are Affordable Housing Corporation of Marion, Indiana, the City of Gary, the City of South Bend, Community Action Program of Evansville and Vanderburgh County, Lafayette Neighborhood Housing Services, Hope of Evansville, Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic, Telamon Corporation, Northwest Indiana Reinvestment Alliance, and the Du Bois Pike Warwick Economic Opportunity Committee. So staff does recommend that the board approve increasing the initial allocation of $1.5 million by $63,010.53 for a total allocation of $1,563,010.53. And that money is to be used for housing counseling services provided by the agencies listed in Table A. And then additionally, we are recommending that the board approve allowing any additional amounts of IFPN funding that we subsequently receive to be added to the approved allocation and used for housing counseling services provided by those agencies, so long as the board has provided an update if that were to occur. So at this time, I will answer any questions that the board may have.
Board, do we have any questions for Chris? Chris, do you want to read both your proposals, your resolutions?
Sure, I can do them both. So staff respectfully requests that the board pass the following resolutions. Resolved that the board approves increasing the initial allocation of $1.5 million by $63,010.53 in additional IFPN funding for a total allocation of $1,563,010.53 to be used for housing counseling services provided by the IFPN agencies listed in Table A as recommended by staff. And resolved that the board approves allowing any additional amounts of IFPN funding that is subsequently received by IHCDA to be added to the approved allocation and used for housing counseling services provided by the IFPN agencies, so long as the board is given an update if this occurs as recommended by staff.
Board, do we have a motion to approve both resolutions?
Andy Place, motion for approval.
June Midkiff, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to section 4 of our agenda under the Finance Department, and we'd like to welcome Mark Pasquarello to present a recommendation on behalf of the Budget Committee regarding the 2022 General Fund operating budget. Mark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board, this will be the Budget Committee's report after reviewing the budget on a meeting that we sat down and discussed on December 7th. So just to go through the start of some of my talking points here, this was actually a full budget cycle being performed as opposed to before, where we had to deal with the COVID effects. And as a reminder to the folks on the board, each IHCDA designates that each budget owner is responsible for managing revenues and expenses and the budget that's being performed. And it will actually then be reviewed and approved by an assigned executive. The reason why I mentioned this is because at that point, the budget is the responsibility all the way down into the actual people performing the task. So as opposed to just being from the high level, it's done at that grassroots level, which of course I think makes the budget much more meaningful, and it brings accountability to the staff as well. And so I think you get a much better budget. On top of that, a more realistic one. And also, if there are variances, which almost always happen at some point in time, the staff will be able to make the corrective measures that are needed to do that during the year. So it's a very big positive. The IHCDA will also look at month-end numbers, and there will be periodic meetings with the budget owners that include CFO and controller and other leading executives in the office. So it just hits back to the point that I was talking about, accountability and the ability to make any changes necessary as the year is going by. I think actually after seeing COVID-19 hit, we all understand the importance of that. And I feel that IHCDA has responded not only accordingly, but also been on top of issues as they're happening as opposed to being behind. On December 7th, the Budget Committee did meet. That is composed of June Midkiff, Jody Golden, and myself. As far as some general comments are concerned, if you look at your packet, I'll just do some general highlights starting with page 2. You look at, first of all, the page 2, I will just state it deals with the general fund only. And as we get to page 7, you start bringing in a lot of the federal programs. And so that's, hence we'll explain some of the differences you see there, because due to COVID-19, you're going to see some material changes between those two documents. The first one will start with the revenues on page 2. They are anticipated, or at least budgeted, to be slightly lower because we've had a tremendous year of being able to sell mortgages in what we call the spot market, and being able to sell those mortgages that provided a lot of income for IHCDA. However, with the feds reducing their purchases of these types of assets, that takes a major purchaser out. So therefore, they have budgeted a little bit lower revenues. Moving to the expenses side, we see that salaries are going to be increasing from what we did this year. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But one of the big things that we were happy to have as we were discussing with staff was that IHCDA has been really focused on drilling down into the amount of money that is being spent on salaries that should be allocated to federal costs, as opposed to just coming out of the general fund. And as they have drilled down into that, I think there's been a realization that some more of the salary costs can be pushed off to the Fed programs, because they do, again, take up so much time. And so therefore, we've been able to shift the balance. And as an example, staff provided in 2013, we were about 53% IHCDA, 47% being allocated to Fed funds. And then now we see that it's 32% to IHCDA and 68% to the Fed funds. So I think that type of movement tells us that staff is watching that and trying to assign cost correctly, and also to make sure that IHCDA is not subsidizing federal program costs. So I think that's been obviously something that's been a shining light there as far as operationally being able to handle that. You also see that there is going to be some increased cost for leased building as the staff is growing, which we'll talk about here in a second. We also, not only the staff increase, but you also need to have room for that staff to be placed and working. So therefore, I believe they're bringing on floor, or at least portions of floor 8 on the building. So to house that staff. Of course, the big thing that everybody cares about is the result from operations. We're positive about $3.2 million. And then if you look at the below the line contingencies and expenses, they're pretty much roughly zero out. And so you end up with a net result of approximately $3 million to the positive. I thought that's always a key component for us. Moving to page 7, really the highlights of page 7 is going to bring the general fund and the Fed programs together. And if you look down there, you're going to see major increases in program reimbursements, salaries. But again, that's the impact of the federal programs coming in. And so therefore, because the allocation wise, we're trying to use federal dollars for that. There are some other aspects that you will see that will increase. One line item that I look at is parking and maintenance and repairs. Just because due to increasing staffing, they are working to make sure people can get to the office by busing them. That's obviously just the cost and reality of the world we live in today. So that cost did go up, but that explains it. And that's for safety of the employees, which is important. I'd be remiss if I don't think we talked about the staffing issues that many of you hear about today in the news. I don't think anybody is able to avoid that, IHCDA included. So you will see professional services have increased. Of course, we're trying to make sure that that's allocated to the Fed programs as much as we can. And I also bring it up because we've told the IHCDA staff that we would like to have some flexibility as the year goes by. If for some reason staffing is an issue, then to be able to hire the resources they need to be able to make sure the IHCDA can run effectively and efficiently. And staff has been able to explain what their proposal is or how they plan on dealing with that, which would be a mix of, obviously hiring new people and training, bring them aboard, but also possibly using some outside firms that can help them get through in case the staffing shortage is causing issues. I'm fine with that because again, we know that that's something that's going on. And so that's something we will be watching. And then of course, if there tends to be any variances, they will make sure that they contact us during the year to explain it. But again, it's very important that IHCDA keep its clean record and its exemplary performance that they have done with both budgeting and the auditing and the financials. And I believe they will continue to do so with that plan. In conclusion, I think the budget is responsible and prudent given everything that's going on. And the big thing that I think it hits me when I review all this is that IHCDA is not only putting a budget that's going to be able to perform their mission for this upcoming year, but they are also allocating and spending funds in a manner that allow them to be sustainable long into the future. And as we know, IHCDA does a lot of great work. And so therefore, financially, they need to be sound so that they can react to situations like we just went through. And so it's kudos to not only the finance staff, but it's really kudos again, I think, to the entire staff who seems to embrace this philosophy of working on the budget. And I think that it's imperative that they do so, but also it helps them become the great employees they are and provide the great service. So I thought that that's a really big deal and something I wanted to be able to give a shout out to the whole entire IHCDA staff. With that, the Budget Committee does recommend the approval of the 2022 general operating budget as depicted in Exhibit A, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. And I just want to second what you just said as far as I want to thank you and June and the Budget Committee, and then really Jake and his entire team. As you said, this is a major way to help this entity and this organization continue to sustain themselves. And so I think you all do a great, you're all great stewards of these dollars. And so thank you for all your hard work that goes into that. So with that, are there any questions for Mark? Okay, seeing none, Mark, did you have a resolution?
I do. The Budget Committee respectfully requests that the board pass the following resolution. Resolved that the board approves the proposed 2022 budget attached hereto as Exhibit A, as recommended by staff. And if I remember correctly, that is actually a motion to approve since it's coming from the board. So we'll just need a second and then the vote.
It's Kelly Mitchell, a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mark and June. Again, we appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to letter B under the Finance Department. Please welcome Rich Harcourt to present a recommendation regarding the single-family mortgage revenue bonds 2022 Series A. Rich?
Madam Chair and Board, good morning. Real quick before I jump into the mortgage revenue bond resolution, please let me say thank you from IHCDA to the Budget Committee. Mark and June do a nice job. They do a deep dive into our numbers. They have a lot of good questions. They spend a fair amount of time with it. And from our standpoint, right, it's very comforting to know that our Budget Committee understands our numbers. They spend time in our numbers, and we have good discussion around it. And that just takes pressure off of us when we know our board is actively involved and knows what is going on financially. So from my IHCDA standpoint, thank you very much. Moving on to the business at hand, I am excited to be back here, right? We're back with yet another resolution for our single family bond fund. As Mark noted in his presentation, you know, revenues from the spot market or TBA market have slowed down. So those are mortgages that we make that we sell in a spot market, and they've slowed down, right, as Mark noted, because the Fed is easing or tapering on their buying, and liquidity in that market is drying up. However, right, we also do a huge amount of volume in our single family bond resolution. And these are, as you all know, mortgages that we make to first-time home buyers. We provide 6% down payment assistance, and we're able to provide a very competitive rate because we purchase those mortgages and own those mortgages through tax-exempt financing. And that is our resolution has done exceedingly well over the last couple of years. We've done a little tinkering around with a product offering. We've now that COVID has opened up, we've been on the streets heavily with a lot of marketing. And so we're excited to see that volume continue. And we're excited to be back in front of you again for yet another approval for a resolution to issue debt. So this resolution is much like the others. We're asking for up to $150 million. We're asking for the flexibility to do taxable or tax exempt. We're asking for variable rate flexibility. And we're also asking for the opportunity to do any refunding, if at all possible to us. The reality of it is this will probably be an issue somewhere in the $100 million range, plus or minus, probably yet another fixed rate issue. Probably no refunding here and probably no variable rate debt. And if we do, right, we'll have a conversation with IFA, with Mark Pasquarella. And if we step outside the bounds of something pretty plain Jane, pretty vanilla, we'll have those conversations. But we'd like to have the authority to be flexible and move with the market if possible. As you all know, we pretty much have the same team. We operate with Ice Miller as bond counsel. CFX is our financial advisor, and we move back and forth between investment bankers. This time it will be JP Morgan Chase that will lead this transaction. So I'll stop there and take any questions before we go to the recommendation or the action if that's acceptable.
Thanks, Rich. Board, do we have any questions for Rich?
This is Mark Pascal. I don't have any questions, but I will state that what Rich has done and his team have done a great job. They do keep us in the loop and give us a call to talk about all their plans. So as he was discussing his discussions with the IFA, I just want to let everybody know that we are working with them during this whole process.
Great. Okay, Rich, I think we're ready for your resolution.
Thank you. Resolved that the board approve the issuance of the 2022 Series A bonds and the related bond documents and disclosure documents as in substantially the same final form presented at this December 2021 board meeting, and authorize any authorized officer to execute the same in accordance with the resolution attached hereto as Exhibit A as recommended by staff.
Okay, we have a resolution. Do we have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve, Mark Pasquarella.
Do we have a second?
Second, June Midka.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Rich, and thank you to your team as well.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to section 5 of our agenda under legal. So please welcome David Stewart to present a recommendation on behalf of the Delegation Committee regarding the IHCDA Delegation of Authority resolutions. David?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Board. As Madam Chair mentioned, I'll be making this recommendation on behalf of the Delegation Committee. I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to meet. Delegation Committee doesn't meet that often, but we did have a good meeting, and I just want to give you a little background on what this document is and what it does. It's a set of resolutions that's adopted by you, the board, in order to help us, be more effective and professional in the management of our programs. The resolutions authorize IHCDA and their executive director to exercise authority and discretion as set forth in the resolutions. Now, the original set was done way back in 2009. It's been updated a couple of times since then. The last update, believe it or not, being in 2014. So today's update will be the fourth one to this resolution. The way the process works is that due to the many changes caused by COVID, the IHCDA executive staff, we thought that we need to review this document and make sure that it's current enough to make sure that we're able to do the things that we need to do and that is in line with the current needs of the agency. After changes were discussed internally, we on December 7th, the Delegation Committee met, and Mr. Pasquarella and Mr. Schottmeyer were there, and we went through this document and we discussed what the executives thought based on our programs needed to be changed. You should have all gotten a copy of this resolution in your packet. and hopefully you have the opportunity to look over it. If you look at the document, you'll see that of the changes, there's only been like 2 major changes on this document. Everything else, as you go down, it all makes sense. You know, the giving the executive director, in this case Jake, the approval of project ownership, approval of changes in project funding, all the things that have to be done as we work through our programs, the federal, you know, with the feds changing things, with the feds coming through additional guidance. Obviously, it just wouldn't make sense for every little thing like that that came up. You know, we'd have to go and have a board meeting for that. But if you go down to number 4, one of the things that we changed on this contract section is at the very end, one of the things that the committee, Mike and Mark, thought was important is that IHCDA be doing our selection of our contractors and our agreements in accordance with the authorities, you know, procurement guidelines. Now, we do that already. However, they thought it was important that since we're going to be updating these guidelines and updating these resolutions, that we tell people in the resolution that we actually do that. So what we added was that we were going to be doing this with the authorities' procurement guidelines as amended from time to time, and which are attached here to and made a part hereof. So at the bottom of this document, you have a copy of the entire procurement guidelines that we follow when we go out and we solicit contracts. Everyone thought it was important to have that attached to the resolution so that if someone comes in and wants to audit us and wants to look at it, we can show them this is what we follow. The next section that was changed was number 6, where it's amendments to the amounts of existing border contracts or award agreements not to exceed 20%. The 2 changes there are, we're talking about amendments to the amounts of existing board approved contracts, because obviously the board doesn't approve every single contract. That would be crazy, first of all, and secondly, it would be time prohibitive. And so what we wanted to do here was make sure that we were able to do the things that we needed to do to get things done, and also have a limit about what we could do with these board approved contracts. Because as the board, you don't want to have a situation where you approve a contract comes to you, because it has to come to you, you approve it, and you don't want us to have the ability just to go in there and just change it whenever we want to without your knowledge. So it used to say that it was existing contracts not to exceed 10%. Then years ago, before I was here, mistakenly that got removed, but there has to be a percentage in there. The committee felt that there has to be a percentage in there, and it has to be board approved contracts, but they felt that 10% was too low, given the amount of money that we're dealing now and given the things that we do. So the agreement was that the board approved contracts not to exceed 20%. So if it's above 20%, then the agency has to bring it back to the board for your further approval. Nothing else has changed in there. If you have any questions about anything, I'd be more than happy to answer those as best I can. Mr. Pasquarella is on there if you want a board perspective as to why things are a certain way. I'm sure that he can answer that. So what I'd like to ask is that that be considered and that be approved. And like I said, I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, David. Board, do we have any questions for David? Okay, David, do you have a resolution?
Yes, I also wanted to say real quick that I really want to thank the board for the delegation authority that they gave Jake during the pandemic, when we were having all kinds of contracts coming in, all things having to be done like immediately. And to give Jake that authority just shows the confidence that you guys have in our agency and in him. Okay. The Delegation Committee respectfully requests the board approve the following resolution. Resolved that the board approves the proposed delegation of authority resolutions attached hereto as Exhibit A as recommended by staff. And as Mark mentioned before, this is a motion by the Delegation Committee. If Mark will agree with that, and then I think all that you will need is a second.
Okay, we have a motion from the Delegation Committee. Do we have a second?
June
Any pla-
Midkiff, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, David, and thanks to your team as well.
Yeah, just so you know, you'll be getting this resolution and Rich's resolution coming around to you through Adobe Sign within the next hour. Thank you.
Okay, great. Move on to section 6 of our agenda, which is our legislative update. And so please welcome Michael McQuillan to provide an update regarding our state housing working group. Michael?
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members, for allowing me to present today. What I'm going to do is just give you kind of a brief preview of a study that we're planning to release as soon as next week. So we'll go ahead and pop through here. Next slide. There we go. There's our logo. So we had a housing working group that began meeting probably 2.5 years ago with IHCDA to kind of advise us to what they'd like to see in a housing study, a comprehensive study for the state of Indiana. And here are a number of the organizations that were a part of that study. I won't read through all of them. I will point out, this is probably a good point, that we're still doing our final edits. For example, AIA architects are on this list, but they were a part of this project as well. So those are our members of our working group. So the working group basically met to discuss the existing stock across the state, including market rate affordable, workforce housing, everything, and taking a county by county and a statewide look. We want to allow to have data to report multiple counties so people can make comparisons when developing strategies. And that's something we're going to continue to further refine once we get this published. This site will be useful not only to government officials, the stakeholders that you saw a moment ago, but concerned citizens, anyone actually with internet access will be able to access this information and make comparisons on a side-by-side basis, as well as compare counties to the state statistics as a whole. Another neat thing is this information on this assessment will be continually updated. It'll be real-time updated as new data comes forward, and the site will be constantly current, unlike your traditional study that you put in a 3-ring binder, set it on the shelf, it gathers dust, and you're done with it. So this will always be relevant. We'll click to our next slide here. So again, this is still a work in process. Everything's not finalized. So this is just a preview of what some of the slides look like. Here's an example where we're looking at a statewide as a whole with the different types of housing, when they were built, listing prices, rent prices, things like that. Click ahead here. You have the same information for affordability issues, cost burden. Again, more numbers, which you can click on and get, drill down even more. Here we have a slide for a county, in this case, Delaware County. In this example, we have population numbers. And again, with all 92 counties, you can pop through and get any of this information as you wish. A different county, looking at jobs numbers, top 5 employers, which is good information to have for the counties and all of that. Here we have an example of pulling up a tab for Benton County, which has some of the rental and homeowner information compared to 2 other counties. Just kind of showing you how you can do a county-to-county comparison with 3 counties or perhaps 2 counties in the state as a whole, if you so wish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Brian if you'll go ahead and just click to a live view. I think we have full functionality on the site right now, And I thought it'd be smart to just kind of take everybody really briefly through the actual live site as we're beginning to finish it up. So that first message that popped up basically was a disclaimer or kind of explain what the site was all about. You have to X that out. When you go to that site, once we publish this, you'll also have an opportunity to go to a video tutorial, which will explain more detail, kind of like what I'm about to tell you now. So here we have our 4 buttons across the top: population. Here's an example of state numbers, population. If you go to the right, we have housing numbers. Again, you can do this either by state or by county. Moving on, housing affordability, very important. And finally, the 4th tab there is jobs. You'll see where it says select geography. So in that drop-down box there, you can have either Indiana or pick a county. Okay, in this case, Blackford County. Again, you can go to all 4 of those tabs and look at the numbers for Blackford County or whichever county you've decided to select as you go through. Further to the right, there's the word compare. And this is the place we were talking about where you pick 3 counties. So we'll have Adams County, we'll compare that to Blackford, and we'll throw in Crawford County. And you'll be able to go through and look at population or any of our other tabs as we discussed, and do just a quick kind of a thumbnail sketch of the numbers for those counties in comparison to each other, or you could have put the state of Indiana in as a whole. Now, the real neat thing, in my opinion, about this is on the far right, we have a tab that says full report. And when you click on that, it'll bring up a approximately 30-some page report, which starts off with, again, acknowledging our data sources, our partners along the way. And then in this case, it looks like it's Blackford County that's pulled up. It'll give you kind of a deep dive on all the numbers for that county that compare to, that you might need to compare for numbers. The neat thing about this is that as municipalities and government officials and anyone else are trying to plan ahead for what's down the road or where do we have needs, they have an opportunity to go on this site and have information that used to take, months and months to compile, and you'd have to hire a firm. IHCDA, in partnership with the Housing Working Group, has gotten all this information in one place, which will now be available to anyone for their use as they're planning in their areas. So it's a very exciting project. Once we're up, IndianaHousingDashboard.com. I would encourage board members or anyone interested to go in and tool around, play with the site, look it over, and I think you'll be surprised at the depth of information and data which is actually contained within this project. With that, thanks again for letting me present, and I'd be glad to answer any questions as we are looking forward.
Thank you, Mike. The board, does anyone have any questions for Mike on the new dashboard? Okay, before we vote, I too just want to thank Mike and his team too. I know this has been a long time coming, so thanks for all of your hard work with the advisory group as well. So, okay, do we have a motion? Or Mike, you're just giving an update, so we don't have a vote on this.
Correct.
Okay.
Just information.
Well, thank you so much again for your hard work on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, next we'll move on to the executive portion of our agenda. Welcome Jacob Sipe, our Executive Director, to provide an executive update. Jake?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to provide an update this month. A couple of items I just want to touch on, as I do each month, on the Indiana Emergency Rental Assistance, excuse me, Indiana Emergency Rental Assistance Program. We post a weekly report that shows the progress of the program. And as of December 13th, we've just shy of assisting 27,000 renters across our state. We've provided up to almost 83 million of rental assistance and about 6.3 million in utility assistance. In total, we've either paid or obligated, because we're providing assistance up to 15 months, just over $260 million has been committed or paid. So we are currently processing about 6,000 applications. Of those, right now we've already determined about 1,800, almost 1,900 of those applications are eligible to receive assistance. So our team is really doing great work, responding and processing those applications very efficiently. And continuing to work with landlords and renters to make sure that we can process their applications as quickly as possible. We also have been working closely with the Indiana courts on the Indiana Eviction Diversion program on that as well. I should mention on that, we have been to Judge Bacon's court in Lawrence Township, eviction court. I want to thank a couple of our team members who have been there and have worked one-on-one and working with the renters and landlords that are participating in Marion County with the Indiana Eviction Diversion Program. I want to thank Samantha Spurgel specifically, Rihanna and Mindy for their work and being there. I was there last week as well with Judge Bacon, and I was in the courtroom participating and working with making sure that renters knew the resources that were available to them. So I want to thank our team. You know, we're on the ground in our communities helping hopefully get renters signed up and applying for the assistance they need to avoid an eviction. So, and I want to thank the landlords specifically who are agreeing to participate in this program in the Indiana, either the rental assistance program or the Indiana Eviction Diversion Program. Landlords are certainly a key component to this, and they've been really working well with making concessions and understanding the application process and getting signed up with us so we can make sure that we can process their applications as quickly as we can. So big thanks to everyone who's really working hard on this program. So the other piece I want to mention, I haven't brought it up before, is the that came out of the 2021 legislative session is a low barrier homeless shelter task force that was created by Senate Enrolled Act 218. Part of that task force has two co-chairs, and those are Tom McGowan and Deputy Mayor of Indianapolis, Jeff Bennett. I'm also a member of the task force. That task force has also assigned to IHCDA to staff and provide administrative support for the task force. So the primary charge of this task force is to determine the cost and evaluate the available funding sources for the construction and operation of a low barrier homeless shelter to provide short and long-term housing solutions in the city of Indianapolis. Then its secondary charge is to also study how the state and the city can access additional federal funding for community-based programs for persons experiencing homelessness. Now, this task force is also charged with providing a report that would include findings and recommendations to Governor Holcomb and the Legislative Council of the Indiana General Assembly by December 31st, 2022. Now, the task force should structure its review so that the final report provides an actionable plan for the building and sustaining the shelter. So this is not just a report on just the numbers, but actually how to actually ensure that we have a development and that this shelter, low barrier shelter, can remain sustainable long term. So now I know some of you may be asking the question, while it's in Indianapolis is the focus of the task force, that is true, but the plan, the report, and the charge of the task force is also going to serve as a model for other communities across our state, regardless of their size, to replicate a low barrier shelter that may be needed in their community. So that's just a quick update. I'll continue to provide the board with updates as the task force meets and puts forth a report to Governor Holcomb and the Indiana General Assembly by the end of next year. Quick update on our homeowner assistance fund. As you've probably gotten tired of me hearing me tell you that we have a pending application with Treasury, which is still the case. However, recently, actually within the last week, we did hear from Treasury. They had, I think, 2 clarification questions, and we are responding to them on that. Chris and his team is taking those clarification questions, and hopefully we can get that response made here either this week or early next. And hopefully, if everything goes smooth, because the questions were pretty basic, we're optimistic that we should be receiving approval here soon from the U.S. Department of Treasurer on the Homeowner Assistance Fund. And as Chris mentioned, partnering with the Indiana Foreclosure Prevention Network and their housing counselors, outreach is already underway, and touching base with those homeowners who are interested in needing assistance through the Homeowner Assistance Fund. So as we wind down the year, we are working very diligently on creating our 2021 annual report. I just want to make the board aware that our intent is to have the annual report done by the end of January and shared with our housing partners and the public here by the end of January. Hopefully we can get that done. I want to thank our team and everyone who's been working diligently on pulling the numbers and showing the impact that we have had across our state in 2021. So really proud of our team being on it and being able to provide not just the numbers, but also the stories and that we've had across our state for the programs that we administer through a network of organizations. So with that, I probably should pause and just say thank you to our board of directors for your support this year, and also everyone at IHCDA and the team and all of our housing partners that we have, which is a variety, as you can imagine, quite a spectrum of a variety of different housing providers across our state that we work with to implement and provide housing and other types of community development programs that further our mission here at IHCDA. Obviously, it's been quite a challenging year for us this year. However, I will say personally, it's been probably the most rewarding year that I've ever experienced here at IHCDA, in knowing that we really have come together as a housing industry and understanding the impact that housing has in our communities and those that we serve. So with that, I just want to thank the board and our team and our housing providers, and wish all of you a very happy holiday season. Also, just real quick, as we go into 2022, the next board meeting will be January 27th at 10 a.m. Location to be determined, so stay tuned on that. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, does anyone have any questions or comments for Jake and his update? Okay, well, before we adjourn, I just wanted to, on behalf of Lieutenant Governor Crouch, thank Jake, his entire leadership team, and the entire staff at IHCDA. I know that Lieutenant Governor was able to make a visit, or a couple visits actually this week, to just kind of walk around and talk to some of the staff, and I know she really had thoroughly enjoyed doing that. So Jake, thank you for hosting her. The last, obviously, 2 years have been, I guess I don't know what the right adjective to describe the last 2 years would be, but IHCDA has had incredible pressure put upon them, and I think they've done a tremendous job in sifting through all of the new programming, the new dollars, and while keeping their regular programming up to date and up to speed and effective for the rest of the state. And so, Jake, kudos to you and your team for all that you've done. Also, I just want to thank, as Jake did, the board. Thank you for the time and dedication that you put into it. These are important meetings that we have. The packets are thick, and I know that you guys spend a lot of time going through them and reviewing them. And so we just thank you for what you do for our agency as well. So I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. But with that, is there any other business to come before the board? If not, then I will hear no other business. This meeting is adjourned, and it is 11:10 a.m. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas. Yeah.
Thanks all.
Thank you.